Hi guys, and today I have somebody at Brewing e-commerce whose job I would love to take. Right, out of all the industry verticals that we work in e-com, in D2C, etc., I think Tim works in one of the most exciting category and also runs this business which has a lot of innovation, a lot of things going on, and I'm so excited to let all the insights from him come out. Tim, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Tim, so while I know about the exciting role, I'd love just for you to kind of tell everybody what you do, your place of work, and then we'll have some shots together.
Yeah, so that's good. So I'm Tim. I'm head of e-commerce for the Millenium Group. The Millenium Group is a international import-exporter of alcohol, cash and carry, convenience, wholesale in FMCG and beers, wines and spirits. My role is to run a business called the Bottle Club, which is a D2C online alcohol multi-brand retailer. So we're selling everybody else's products, right? So we sell 7,500 beers, wines, and spirits, ranging from £20,000 bottles of Macallan to £2 Bailey's miniatures and everything in between. My catchphrase, which kind of explains very much about what we're about, is that we are effectively the ASOS of alcohol. That's what we're trying to achieve. We're selling brands and we're selling products that otherwise there wouldn't be somewhere else to go and purchase them from. But yeah, so I'm a big e-commerce geek, but I'm also an alcohol geek as well. So yeah.
Exciting. Thank you for that, Tim. So now for everybody listening, you understand, right, where I was coming from. You can talk about beauty, you can talk about wellness, you can talk about apparel. There's so many segments, so many guys trying to do different things. We'll try to talk about alcohol, right? Um, Tim, one of the first things I want to start by saying this, right? That in my journey, and I'm not sure if it's generalized, and you please validate the statement. This is when you get out of school, go to college, you start going to the pubs. You always recognize those brands. You try them, and then the buying journey is about going and trying to find the same product in different places. Right? But now
You're
trying
cutting
to
out.
okay, all right, I
I
I
think
can hear
we're
you well. So
yeah.
yeah.
Sorry, say that again. Sorry.
So I was saying that what, coming from college, when you have your first drink, and then you get out, and then find those pubs, and you start recognizing those brands, and then you go to other places, and then you want the same product available, etc., right? So the whole traditional experience, like many other products, buying alcohol has been very face to face.
Yes.
And now trying to have that in the digital world, where it's a lot different than experimenting something, it's not very different than trying out something. How do you think this change has been in the past few years?
So I think, and this also comes with the time when celebrity brands have come, where people now want to have an affinity to brands and to categories. They want to learn about what they're drinking. Most people would be, their journey into alcohol is something that their parents told them about, something that their friends have told them that they would like, and that they then start to have that regularly because that's the thing that they've tried. And some people are more skeptical and say, "Oh, I tried that once. I don't like that category." I think
Mm.
tequila is a great example of that. Champagne as well can be sometimes polarizing. But you learn about alcohol from your friends and your family, and then you grow with the things that you know about. And I think over the last, probably post COVID especially, people started to really, when bars and restaurants weren't open, people wanted to really understand the products that they were purchasing and why, and they were growing in their understanding of the product, the category, and also the brand story. I have hundreds of anecdotes that I bore friends, colleagues, and people at events about each of our brands, and we sell over 1,000 brands, and each one of those is standing today because of the journey, the story, the legacy that they've had to get here. And I think there is a whole switch towards provenance when it comes to consuming product. And is it ethically sourced? Why have they used this bottle? Where did it come from? Why is it still around? And I think if you're purchasing alcohol just for consumption and you're out in bars and restaurants, you're going to choose what you know, you're going to choose something that you recognise on the menu. But when it comes to an alcohol online purchase, it's more considered, it's more a growth thing, it's things that you would otherwise wouldn't have access to. Jack Daniels is always one of my examples that grocery stores sell around 4 SKUs. There'll be Jack Daniels number 7, honey, apple, fire, and potentially Gentleman Jack. But we have 15. We've got the Frank Sinatra edition, we've got the Master Distiller series, we've got the anniversary editions, and all of the things in between, and McLaren special edition bottles, for example. Though that's what Bottle Club's about. But if you love a brand or you want to explore something, the depths of Scotch, for example, and you want to get down into your Campbelltown whiskey, your Highland whiskey, your Speysides, you're going to want to do a bit more exploration, learn about it. And I think that's where we've found our niche. But the separate side of that is the alcohol world is very, not antiquated, but unapproachable. You kind of need to know a lot before you get into it, especially in wine. And our ethos is to make alcohol approachable, to take away some of the pomps and ceremony around the product and just talk about why they would like it, things that align. For example, some people might not like me saying it, but English sparkling wine is effectively champagne, but without being from the Champagne region. The chalk's the same. There's a lot of the grapes are the same. There's a very, very strong overlap, and a lot of champagne houses are starting to look at English sparkling as an opportunity. Taittinger, Pommery, all looking at where they can start using English grapes and take away some of the cost. So telling people that in an approachable way without having to go into the level of detail that you would at like a wine merchant, etc., is very much what we're about. But that's what I think alcohol e-commerce is. It's storytelling, it's provenance, and then it's also access to products that they otherwise wouldn't have known were there.
Excellent. I think the storytelling part, I think in the digital world is so important, especially when you're trying to always cater to a newer segment, right? The guys who become of legal drinking age, now access to social media. I never thought in it this way, but I think you said it amazingly well. Is you have to start connecting with them as well. That maybe 10 years back nobody would have cared that if this whiskey is sourced sustainably, but
Yeah.
today it does matter. Do you see brands evolving a lot in those perspectives today to connect with the Gen Zs and the
Yeah,
youngsters?
there's definitely a move towards mindfulness. Epicureanism and appropriate drinking is one big thing, and a lot of businesses are then also going into the 0%. There is a move away from kind of Gen Z into not drinking as much and being thoughtful in terms of what they're consuming. So, exposing those stories and, B Corp certified businesses. Bacardi is a great example of all of their businesses, very sustainably focused. There's loads that you could go through. But yeah, and then the 0% about people still want to be drinking high quality drinks at events, but they don't necessarily want to be drinking all the time. They want to drive, and we don't need to be focused on the alcohol effects, but more about the quality of the drinks that we're drinking. And I'm really excited for the but the growth within the non-alcoholic space, because I drink whiskey for the taste, not for getting drunk or for alcohol. So if we can start getting products that we can drink, not necessarily during the day, but if you could be having a really lovely cocktail while you're at work and having mojito that's non-alcoholic, etc., because of the flavours that you're having, or when you're out for dinner and you haven't got, I can only have one of those because I've got to drive. That really opens up those occasions, and even Fevertree has realised that there is also a gap in the market at the moment for a high quality non-alcoholic drinks. So, if you go to a bar and restaurant at the moment, if you don't want to drink alcohol, realistically, you have juice and sodas, and that's not. You don't want a Coke all the time. You don't want orange juice. So building a range of our adult soft drinks is what the category is now called. Is another, looking at how do we consume these products appropriately and for the growth of more conscious drinkers.
Okay, that's pretty exciting. Yeah, I wouldn't want to go and just you're right, right? The traditional orange juices or the sodas and things like that, right? But put like those other flavors in a different way. Like Fever Tree is a perfect example of the kind of different flavors of mixers they do.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And I I also remember that, reading an article which talks about saying these non-alcoholic drinks are actually more expensive than the alcoholic ones.
In a lot of cases, yeah. So especially when it comes to spirits, to de-alkalize spirits is very difficult because obviously the process of making the product is by making it alcoholic. It's the sugars, it's the fermentation, it's the distillation that makes it alcoholic. So then to get the flavors, to get the thing that we're used to, we then need to take the alcohol away from it because the production, if otherwise gin would just be juniper juice, but it isn't. It's a an alchemy of distillation and fermentation to get to this alcoholic product, and then we strip it back from there. So that is an additional cost to the process, which
Wow.
it's quite difficult because why would I want to pay more money for something that
Yeah.
doesn't get me
Yeah.
drunk? And obviously you have duty changes and stuff like that, but there is. So if you're seeing a gin that's the same price, a non-alcoholic gin that's the same price, duties are slightly different, and then you've got but you've got to put extra process in so they kind of level around the same price. There are businesses that never touched alcohol. For example, Wild Idol, which is a massively growing non-alcoholic wine, really nice
Mhm.
product, really like beautiful bottle and etc. But that's never had any alcohol in it. That is effectively, it tastes like wine, but they found a process they're doing without alcoholization. But then there are the opposites where you've got I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head, but wines that are non-alcoholic that have been de-alkalized instead.
Okay. Another format in this conversation is something like this brand in the UK called Lilo. They do the
Yeah.
wine and packages.
Yes.
Do you think that's also taking up the youngsters' fancy nowadays?
With e-commerce, especially, yes. I think because we obviously go to a lot of wine tastings as a business, we talk to a lot of not just wine tasting, spirits tastings, etc. Um, where you are purchasing with your taste buds, and a little bit of story and on the nose, and there's the tasting notes on the nose, etc. You don't get to do that online. So story and what it looks like is what does it. It does it stand out. And the products that sell really well within wine and champagne, for example, the more beautiful bottles, the ones that don't look as cheap, do sell better because they're more beautiful. And especially like 50% of our customers are gifts as well. So you want to gift something beautiful. You don't want to give something. Occasionally, if you're a real nerd within something, you'd pick something where the bottle's not that exciting, but the liquid inside of it is top notch, which I get. But in terms of wanting to show somebody and gift somebody something, how it looks is important.
Yeah.
And in e-commerce, the only way we get to present is visually and with our
Yeah.
descriptions, right?
Yeah. Which goes back to your background, Tim. That you come with the whole design background.
Yeah,
I really love the way you've displayed products on your website. It doesn't look that it's all over the place, but it still gives me a lot of variations and varieties to kind of look at, make me spend the time, and will kind of entice me to maybe try a few things. So I want to understand that trying to do this for apparel and skincare and consumer goods, CPG, etc. is so different. Would you say that what were your thoughts when you were trying to do this entire thing for alcohol first, like brand?
yeah. So when we it came from the approachability side, especially because I think that's the real drinking occasion. I think when you look at our competitors and the businesses that have been around the longest, they've always been specialists. They've always been wine merchants, alcohol merchants, whiskey exchange, for example, incredible business. But they're people that are really considered in terms of when they're going to drink it, why they're going to drink it, and they're connoisseurs of those products. But for the majority of people, they drink at an occasion. They're drinking socially.
Mm.
The reason for doing it is very different, and I think we came at it about the approachability and the lifestyle and the aspiration around the occasion, not necessarily the product. And that's where I would say that we're relatively unrivaled in our space. because we are the lifestyle brand that sells alcohol. We took inspiration from the likes of kind of Misguided, O Beach, Boohoo. They give a set. They're not because they're changing their products so often. The product that you're buying is not what you're buying into. You're buying into the brand that comes with it, and I think that's how our approach has been. So, I say when I joined the business, it was very much in line with the rest of the merchants, etc. And we saw and I came and said we need to build a space where we can be a lifestyle business, and that's what it's always been. And then it's the same with the content that we're doing, and we see that if we can build a community and people that want to come to us and learn about the products, they're naturally going to come to us for the sales. We're not trying to be sales oriented. And, the majority of our acquisition historically has come from shopping, Google Shopping, the Google search. But effectively that is a race to the bottom because you're only competing on price because everybody else is selling the same thing. But when we acquire that customer, they stick around. They want to learn a bit more. We've got one of the lowest unsubscribe rates in emails within the industry and within e-commerce in general, because we're telling people things all the time. And I've learned over the last couple of years about understanding your metrics appropriate to your segments or to your cohorts. So we've got 3 cohorts, which is kind of self-consumption, obviously, but gifting and hosting. And each one of those has a different purchase rate. But the point is they still want to learn. They're still reading our emails. Our open rate's really strong. They're learning all the time, but when we shouldn't be benchmarking, did they buy on that email? Because they weren't going to. They were going to buy later on because they're learning about those products. Say for somebody that wants to gift whiskey at Christmas to their boss or to one of their clients, during the year they heard about the origin stories of Jack Daniels and the products within it because of an email that we did or a piece of content that we've launched, or they now have a better understanding of Irish whiskey and single pot stills because we've talked about Irish whiskey during that year, that they can do a better job of gifting later on in the year. So then working out how to benchmark the performance of those silos is a journey through it. But that's how we've got there. And I think it was just always about being lifestyle and experience led, and everything else kind of naturally fits into it. And we also learned that influencers is always a really good conversation because influencers work really well for clothing, right? And wellness, because you say, if I want to look like them, if they look good in it, I'll look good in it. If that's what their skin looks like because they've taken these supplements, I want to take them. But when it comes to drinks, just because you like the look of somebody or the experience they're having, you're not necessarily going to like what they drink. So we've never had a positive experience of influencers. But what we have done is when we've shared the story and the content, that's what resonates, and that's what we've kind of leaned more into doing is telling stories and the experience of drinking and marketing towards those experiences. And then they can come and do their own research in terms of what products they want to consume based on their preferences and flavor profiles, etc. But yeah.
Okay. Well, I love the breakdown of the segments that you spoke of. I think just goes down that how well do you know your customer? What are they buying? What are the repeat rates? What are the consumption? And things like that. And so then you can go and personalize, reach out, on-site, email, and all the other channels, etc. Were very interesting on this whole celebrity and influencer thing. I never thought of it in this way, So, do you mean like if somebody is a celebrity who launches a brand, like Beckham has the Hague Club or
Yeah.
something? I don't know if he owns it or he endorses or something like that. Would you think that would not go and influence the sales that much, or?
So it influences the sale of people that like whiskey, that like Beckham, right? So if they're buying a gift, they can. The Hague Club not so much, but like Terramana were one of the products that we were the first to sell in the UK. That's the Rocks tequila.
Okay.
And the sales of that are not because of the quality of the tequila or where it came from or any of that kind of breakdown. It's the Rocks tequila. So if you're buying a gift for someone that loves the Rock, that's a great product. You don't have to have a technical knowledge of the quality of the tequila, or is it 100% blue agave? Is it, how long is it aged for? What area of Oaxaca is it from? It is just the base the box tequila, and we're saying with 818 with Candle Jello. So that's where
Yeah.
the celebrity thing comes in. For people that like a category, you're giving them an affinity to, you're finding a Venn diagram of an overlap of interests. That's what the
Yeah.
celebrity brand does. But then from the influencer side, they don't have a product, they just have a
Yeah.
preference. So then there's a light bit that I like that person, maybe I'll try
Yeah.
it
But
because they've
yeah.
endorsed it. But then if you don't like tequila, you're not going to buy it. So
Sure. Okay. Okay. Perfect. Perfect. I have to say, the more you're speaking into this, Tim, I'm kind of thinking towards a different dimension that I never thought of, because the category is, I think, a niche in terms of, the number of beauty or other brands that you find, alcohol is very less, etc. So I think the learnings are insane. That goes back to the fundamental principles and the way you were talking and knowing you a little bit. You're also very number driven. You're very KPI driven, right? You need to
yeah.
look at the data, etc. Um, what are your top five priorities in business today? Right, right from the acquisition, churn rate, or conversion, or return rates. So what are those key numbers that you look at on a day-to-day basis?
So, because we're part of a group, and we're not kind of a VC business, it's very P&L driven. It's very much, are we profitable? And what does profit look like is an understanding of your numbers, which is why I'm so number driven. But it's understanding where your successes are. So, because of the range of products that we sell, how do we ship? Is the shipping profitable? Are we losing on shipping? If we're losing on shipping, why? Where are you spending the time? And I think I don't necessarily have top metrics, but what I have is the tip one is to understand your costs, understand what your genuine margin is, and understand what your cost of sale is within that margin, and then you get to work out what your operating profits are. That's key because there's no growth in revenue. I think revenue is a horrible number because it means nothing. You can turn
Yeah.
over £20 million a year and lose five. It doesn't make any sense to talk and be proud of your revenue number. Your profitability is the bit that matters, and it doesn't
Mhm.
necessarily even have to be high profit, but it needs to be profitable. That's what. There's no point being in business if you're constantly losing. So that's one, but it's understanding what that breakdown is and where the costs are. And
Mhm.
running an e-commerce business is not cheap. Technology is not cheap, and the amount of functionality that you start adding on top of things gets more and more expensive. We have
Right.
7,500 products. We've got to merchandise those with a very small team with a very tight margin. So we have to be on top of, like, you know what I'm like. I get involved in, can I bring AI into this? Can I build an algorithm that's going to give me a better thing? We built algorithms that do all of our merchandising and we're 30% more profitable because of the algorithms that we built, for example.
Mm.
So once you have a strong understanding of your P&L and your margin, then you can start looking at that as a percent, each of the parts of your business as a percentage of that, margin, the margin that you're making. So then if
Mm.
you've got your cost of sale, that's going to come out. So then how much is your cost of sale? What's your ROAS and what is that as a percentage of your revenue or of the sale? And then
Mm.
go down to your technical cost, your fixed cost, and breaking those down. And then you'll start to be able to look at scaling because then you'll know how much you need to scale by to cover the cost that you're building. And then if you're
Mm.
going to add more money into your advertising budget, then you can work out your calculated predicted revenue or
Mm.
predicted profits. So that's how I'm number driven. It's looking now at how impactful are those things going to be in my business.
Mm.
And I wind up a lot of tech partners when they tell me about the return on investment, but they
Yeah.
benchmark their return on investment and return on revenue. And I was like, well,
Yeah.
actually, if I've got to cover this cost, I've got to cover this cost in 3% of the sale just to
Mm.
break even. So if you're
Right.
charging me 20K a year for this tech
Yeah.
platform,
Yeah.
that's a lot of money that you've got to make me just for this one solution, right? And then
Yeah.
they go, oh, I get
Yeah.
it now. And we've had a lot of those conversations where I absolutely love the technology that they're showing us, but
Mm.
if it doesn't have a return, it doesn't help our business. It's not going to grow. It would grow revenue,
Mm.
but it wouldn't grow profit, and it would just start to put us in. We would lose. We wouldn't grow.
Yeah. But something to, you know, uh, again, pick your thoughts on this, right, Tim? Attribution is so difficult today.
Yeah.
Uh, like what we do is we kind of calculate the number of sessions it takes for a visitor to finally buy.
Yeah.
Right. So it might be depending on the AOV, depending on the what kind of consumption that product has. So it can be 1.2 sessions to maybe 20 sessions or whatever it is. And this between these sessions, it can also the time would vary, right? And there's something you see on Facebook, there's something you see on TV, there's something you see in email. Like there's just so many touch points that the customer has to go through to go and spend that 50 quids on a whiskey bottle, right?
Yes.
um is attribution that important for you, or do you think it's too complex and the last click matters? What's your approach?
Attribution is important to understand where to put your efforts and where your growth opportunities are. And as I said, as much as we rely on shopping, it's not a future-proof solution. You're never going to grow if you have to keep paying to acquire your
Yeah.
customers.
Yeah.
But you need to know that when you are acquiring the customers, that you're doing it within the business restraints, you within profit, right? So attribution's key for you to work out where. But attribution is, as you said, each platform shows you a different story. And I think that's why you've got the rise of people like Triple Whale and Polar and things. We're a Triple Whale customer. And our approach is you need to pick a metric and stick to it and use that as your. That's so using something like Triple Whale, you can do it in GA, but GA is a little bit more tricky to do. We use Triple Whale as attribution, and then that is what we benchmark against. How that's done against previous performance, even if that is not exactly the channel where they came from, that is the number that we're using. Because if we were to use them individually and say, well, Pinterest says it's doing like 20 ROAS, but then Triple Whale says it's doing 1, and GA said it's doing 6, you start to argue with your values. But if you can establish the impact on the business from one set of metrics and go from there, that's how I think you should just choose wisely, but choose one and then benchmark against that. Test A/B test against that. You can obviously do it on revenue and profit, but in terms of directly attribution, that's the way that's how we do it.
Okay, yeah, and then go crazy and insane on that number because you need to put your heart out to improve those. So.
Yeah, and all of those platforms also can do a breakdown down into a campaign, so you can still A/B test within shopping in terms of, okay, is this working? So I've just done one of our best performing social ads at the moment is a carousel ad for vodka, right? And it's completely dynamic, and it's a lot of retargeting what they've looked at previously. But when you see that ad, the majority of the products in it are things that you could buy anywhere. They're not exciting. You're seeing Smirnoff, you're seeing Ciroc Snap Frost, you're seeing Belvedere. And it's been like, well, they've already know those products. Bottle Club's USP is very much the cool stuff, the stuff they haven't seen before. So we've got an A/B test running at the moment between, is a curated list of vodkas better than a dynamic list of things that may or may not sell? Because one thing I talk about all the time, and I find this a super interesting topic, is what people define as trending. So we have a collection on site called Trending Now.
Okay.
But there's a misconception in e-commerce that best selling is trending. But best selling just means it's the most well known, it's the most units that you've sold, or it's turned over the most revenue. But it is not the most researched, it's not the most viewed, it's not the most engaged with, it's just what sells. And you can benchmark that, is it units or is it sales? But I don't think either of those are correct. Because you may have a really low conversion rate on a product because your page isn't right, the image is wrong, it's slightly out of date, but people came to look at it. So we base trending on sessions. So what people want to look at, and then when you know what those products are, how well did it convert? Am I communicating it correctly? Am I displaying that information? Is it engaging? Do we want to incorporate a recipe? Do we want to tell the story of the brand? That's been our approach.
Yeah. No, I'm glad I agree on this part because we do this trending, which is based on clicks and sessions rather than just purchase information. Because again, there are so many hops and there are so many reasons why the guy did not buy it.
Yeah.
Right. But interest is something they hear. It's they're coming with the intent and stuff like that. So
exactly.
That makes complete sense.
I think that's also a challenge for not just alcohol, but I always, when I'm at e-com events, I talk a lot about being a multi-brand retailer because I don't think there are many successful e-commerce
Yeah,
multi-brand retailers. There are marketplaces, obviously, but
yeah,
multi-brand retailers where they're selling other people's products, but they own that stock. They are responsible for the sales of those products. There are not that many successful ones because of those same pitfalls. And growing an audience is very difficult as a multi-brand retailer because you're selling products, but you're having to sell yourself at the same time. If I did a
yeah,
billboard right now with Johnny Walker on it, all I do is increase Johnny Walker sales to Tesco
yeah.
because they know where to go buy it from, and I've
It'll be
reminded them about that product. But I need to grow Bottle Club as a business. How do I do that? Is actually engaging, making sure people want to come and hear from us, and that's again more content and experience led than product.
yeah, yeah. And this industry has so many different challenges, right? I'll tell you something very odd or thing that I never realized happened. This friend of mine was trying to do a whiskey tasting subscription app in Canada, right? And while the tech and product and ROAS and all that thing is a very different challenge, even before launching, what they were trying to do is to take the bottle like a Johnny Walker, right? And trying to put them in taster bottles.
Yep.
And they said the hardest time to was to go and convince those brands that we'll be able to maintain the quality and do everything in trying to do it. And this is something I couldn't really imagine on the face of it as a consumer. Like, hey, I'm
Yep.
not getting the 750 ml, I'm just getting the 150 ml. But any of such more intricate challenges that you face in your business, Tim, that you would like to highlight?
More
Like
intricate.
returns is another challenge area that I can think of, right, for
So,
you guys.
so that again.
Returns.
Say that again. Sorry.
Returns, right? If
Returns. Yeah,
yeah,
returns is a big challenge of ours, and distribution because obviously because of the range of the products that we sell, we're selling 24-pack cases of beer in an order, and then we're also selling miniatures that can go into a tiny box. So you know, packaging, delivery rates, weight,
mm,
damages, especially because we're selling high value breakable products distributed around the UK. So yeah, returns and damages is a huge one, and making sure couriers are on top of things is a big
mm,
problem. Also, fraud at the moment in e-commerce is just an absolute nightmare. And we in efforts to maximize profitability, we've moved away from Shopify payments, so we're using an external payment gateway and
mm,
doing our own cross-checking for 3D secure and things like that. But there's always bypassing, and you're moving away from something as structured as Shopify payments is difficult. Shopify payments and Stripe are brilliant businesses
mm,
for doing everything together, but the cost of them is so much higher, and we're
yeah,
looking for those maximum efficiency. So we've had to learn about fraudulent transactions. How do we deal with it?
mm,
And then customer service. Obviously, you guys knows that we work with one pilot for the
mm, mm,
scalability. So 50% of all of our sales is in the last 10 weeks of the year. So
mm,
we do 50% of our volume within 10 weeks, which is mental. But the number of orders that we have, the number of products that we sell, the number of customer service queries that come in is
mm,
is massive in during that period, and a lot less so. So having a scalable solution for the staff, for
mm.
both pick and pack and customer service, that's a challenge. That's one of our challenges as well.
Okay, yeah, yeah, at a very different level than all the others, and I can only imagine what you guys go through in that time. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm
um,
always there in the warehouse picking the orders myself.
yeah, but at least you don't need any kind of extra motivation to go to the warehouse, Tim. So
Yeah,
that's
for
a
sure.
different story. Um, tell me this, right? That this is a question I ask a lot of people in the business, usually around that category. For you, I'll change it a little bit. Is if I were to stand a new alcohol brand now, right? What are the top three priorities you would suggest that I kind of think of in launching the product in the market?
Brand position and how you're going to get people to know about it, because there's different ways. I think one of the reasons that Millennium, our group, does so well is because we're not just an e-commerce business. This business wouldn't exist without Millennium behind it, and that's true with with all of our main competitors. They're not just an e-commerce business. There's a business behind to support it, and support it on margins, support it on pricing. But what I get to see a lot of is the different kinds of alcohol routes to market. So a lot of them will go down convenience, so getting them into corner shops, co-ops, things like that. Some will go lower value, lower margin and get into grocery. Some will focus on trade and get them into bars and restaurants. Some are e-commerce focuses, like the cases of wine you mentioned earlier, cartons of wine, sorry. So work out what the kind of product that you want to be is, and then that will dictate where your audience is going to be. If you want to make a lower value but high volume product for grocery and convenience, picking the channels, picking the partners that get you into those places is key. But then if you want to make a real statement lifestyle brand, then you're going to go down an e-commerce educational route where you're going to start telling storytelling, because there's no storytelling done in grocery and in convenience. And then on trade, slightly different but more experiential led, higher consumption, more faces see the products, but they're going to get liquid on lips at a lower cost than buying a full bottle and committing to it. But it's very much, what do you want your product to be and stand for, picks the audience and the distribution of it.
Okay. Yeah. No, perfect. I think those are some really good points, because what you mentioned is, on the face of it, it doesn't look like it, right? I'll come up with a cool brand, I'll go ahead and launch it, then the whole run of the mill of ads and ROAS and all that. But you need to have that foundational structure which kind of uplifts you and then brings the margin profitability, because the costs are insane. And and how does the next 12 to 24 months look like you as a brand, Tim? What are your top priorities?
Our top priorities are, one is about creating more content, and how we create that content. We're building a team of content creators so that we can start talking about different stories in different ways. Again, that's where we see one of our best return on investments in terms of acquisition. So we will continue to do shopping, but we don't want that to be the defining part of our business. We don't want to rely on it. Doing more, trying to stay in line with SEO, because obviously the benchmark of how that works, and we moved from Core Web Vitals, so then it went from the content to the speed and all of these additional kind of requirements. So making sure that the site is working efficiently for the metrics that are going to deal with our SEO and our organic content. And then not other markets, but things like getting into B2B and supplying on trade and wholesale with the products that we have access to that nobody else would have done. We see there's a big opportunity with, especially things like the Rocks Tequila, that it's not cheap. So £60 a bottle of tequila, for example, you're going to want to have tried it first. And we can't be doing the sampling, but if we can get people to go and get liquid on lips in bars and restaurants and work with some partner venues, be the supplier to them, that's then going to bring sales back to us for when they want to purchase that product and grow and learn more about it, right? So those kind of B2B on-trade partnerships, and then exploring other markets, because there is interest in other countries for the products that we have in the UK. We're actually quite lucky with the amount of access to alcohol that we have compared to places in Europe, places in the US, etc. So bringing our range to them is another potential win for us.
Okay. Yeah. That should be exciting, because the number of SKUs that you mentioned are crazy and insane number to deal with. And I think every country has their peculiar brands and stuff like that, and having somebody else from the other part of the world is kind of exciting for people to keep on trying.
And that's like every time we acquire a customer, they stick around as a user, right? So that's all, and then making sure that content is relevant, working closely with brands to tell those stories. As you know, I've got many anecdotes for the brands, and I just want other people to hear them, because when they hear them, they're bought in. And not just to us, to them. I just think that's really special. Like, I recently visited Jack Daniel's distillery last year, and one of the biggest brands in whiskey that we all know has actually a beautiful family story. 60% of the people that work there are all part of the two families that started it, right? And we all know Jack Daniel's, but we don't know that story. And we've got 1,000 brand stories to tell, 1,000 brands. But then, like, why is why is gin and tonic what gin and tonic is now? And it was about the people that needed to drink quinine for the anti-malarial wanted something that kind of changed the flavour of it, so they started putting gin with the tonic. And we got gin and tonic, and now we're all drinking gin and tonic back from the anti-malarial days. There's so many of those stories. There's so many origins of categories. There's things about how cognac region was protected during World War II. That's super engaging. People go, "Oh my god, I didn't know this story," and they want to tell that at their next dinner party or the next time they consume it. They want to have that little anecdote, and it just builds a resonance with the product and the category. And that's what we kind of get excited over sharing.
Yeah, and you had my attention totally about this as well, and these are things that I think today when people buy, they don't just buy the product, they buy the experience, they buy the story, they buy the overall package. And some of the things that you mentioned are just amazing, and especially the way you say them, so that makes all the difference. um, Absolutely great, Tim. I think a lot of these things that you bought, I couldn't think of, and it's like a wine, but from a different region, a different era compared to most of the other industries in the whole
Yeah,
e-com space. And I think what you're doing is fantastic. My last question, Tim, and have a few shots before because this is the toughest one. um, with all your stories, all your escapades, and all your experience, you have to tell us a story or something about yourself that you've not told anyone else.
that I've not told anybody else. I'm quite an open book in terms of my life.
Or like a cool incident with you, or something happened, something exciting that you'd like to share
So
with us.
a funny anecdote about me.
Okay, let's go.
Okay, so I when I was 18, I went to go and work in Uganda. I was a manager of a charity in Uganda, and I'd been there a few months. I was the only white guy for quite a lot of miles,
Yeah.
and I finally got comfortable enough in this little village that I would go and buy myself some passion fruits.
Uh-huh.
And I went to the market and bought myself some passion fruits. And the way I was taught to open them was to squeeze them, and they would split. And I was in this market, and I opened the passion fruit, and the entire contents of the passion fruit squirted on a guy's face in the market, and he shouted, mazungu, which is basically, "Hey, white boy," and everybody in the market turned and stared at me, and had this little altercation with this guy, and I bought him some passion fruits to make up for it. So it
Awesome.
was very embarrassing, but very yeah, good
Yeah.
experience, but quite scary at the time.
Yeah, but you got the support right since then from everybody, and you're an absolute pleasure to hang out with, Tim. Every time we meet, there's always things I learn from you, and today's session was absolutely amazing. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you
And
for having us. I really appreciate it. It's not really nice catching up.
yes, and absolutely looking forward to having you sometime again. So appreciate your time.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.